When the patrol car pulled up beside the Harley, the officer stepped forward with a confident smile. "This some kind of joke?" she fired back, halfway between irony and authority. Owen Bennett, 82, didn't move, hands steady on the handlebars, eyes fixed on a distant point. "License and registration. Off the bike now." The mirrored sunglasses hid her impatience. Her fingers were already brushing the holster. No one guessed that in just a few minutes 50 soldiers in Humvees would show up to defend that veteran. Bennett has been getting up at 5 o'clock for 40 years. Discipline isn't a habit, it's his nature. His farm, 16 kilometers away, fell silent yesterday when the 1978 John Deere tractor quit. Only the hydraulic system made it out alive. He knows exactly which part is missing. He recognizes every bolt the way you'd spot an old friend. In the tin shed sleeps the 1970 Harley Mathewson shovelhead. The engine still roars like thunder. Looks don't matter, getting there does. At 82, Bennett rides with reflexes forged in years of service. His gaze sweeps the surroundings, alert to any movement. Even so, to anyone who sees only an old man on an ancient machine, he seems harmless. The traffic light at the edge of town turned red. Bennett let the Harley rumble beside the station where he always fuels up. The deep growl echoed off facades and shop windows, reminding everyone that sometimes the most explosive stories roll in on two rusty wheels. The engine noise died when Bennett caught in the mirror the flickering dance of red and blue lights. The squad car parked behind him, and before the silence could return, Officer Alice Watson strode over, uniform still untouched by time. She was 28, with 3 years on the street and freshly polished confidence. "Shut that machine off, sir," she ordered, voice leaving no room for doubt. Bennett gripped the bars, eyes fixed on the line of asphalt, as if all traffic depended on his stillness. Watson tossed a quick look to her partner, Matthew Sanchez, who was already sizing up the Harley coated with decades of road dust. "Papers, off," she went on, hand resting on her sidearm. The old man handed over a leather wallet, papers arranged with the calm of someone who never hurries. Watson frowned. 82 years old?" she read aloud, trying to poke him. Sanchez grinned, tapped the fender. "That bike's seen more winters than I have." Even so, they ordered, "Hands on the bike, feet apart." The pat-down felt like ritual, not necessity. Around them, onlookers appeared like ants drawn to a crumb of anxiety. Murmurs spread. "Mr. Bennett, where do you live?" "On a small farm, Highway 340. "Alone?" "Alone." The warm seat, the flashing lights, and the crowd's whisper beat an uneven rhythm. Something there was ready to blow any second, but no one knew which way the first crack would go. Watson threw a quick glance at Sanchez, who raised his eyebrows as if to say, "Just another lost old guy." She stepped closer to the rider in the worn-out jacket. "Do you have family, sir? Anyone who can look after you?" she asked, pen already poised. "I've looked after myself for 82 years, came the voice from behind the helmet. Watson pressed on. "Isn't riding that bike at your age risky? You could hurt someone." Bennett kept his hands clasped behind his back, staring at the asphalt as if nothing else existed. Not even his breathing changed. "Sir, I'm talking to you," the officer repeated. "I'm listening. Then tell me, doesn't it seem irresponsible to ride around on that antique machine?" Sanchez, almost whispering, said, "I think he can barely hear. Look, he hardly reacts." Watson raised her voice. "Mr. Bennett, can you hear me? Do you understand what we're saying?" The small crowd grew and voiced its own verdicts. "Leave the old man alone. Don't these cops have real work? He looks confused. Somebody call his family." When no one knows the story, half accuse and half defend. Bennett closed his eyes, drew a deep breath, and remembered far-off borders, unsigned roads, dusty battles, challenges bigger than this well-lit sidewalk. He survived all that more than 50 years ago. Now he was just one more old man being inspected in public. Hudson dropped the rag he'd been using to polish the pump as soon as he recognized Owen Bennett across the avenue. The station owner and Gulf War veteran had been filling Bennett's tank for 15 years. On-time payments, brief chats about weather and engines, unwavering courtesy. Seeing his friend surrounded by police, face flushed with embarrassment, made his blood pound. Hudson grabbed the phone and dialed Fort Carson. "This is Hudson Stevens. I need an officer on duty. It's urgent." On the sidewalk, Officer Watson raised her voice. "Sir, you're coming with us to the station." Bennett looked up, speaking softly. "For what reason?" "Disorderly conduct and disobedience," she replied. "And you need a medical evaluation before you get back on that bike." Bennett's calm reminded her of how he used to train 18-year-old recruits who thought they already knew everything. Her partner Sanchez tried to ease the tension. "Alice, let me handle it. Mr. Bennett, please understand our concern. A machine like that requires quick reflexes." "Dangerous for whom?" Bennett replied without changing his tone. "For you and for everyone else on the road. I've been riding for 65 years and I've never caused an accident." Sanchez hesitated. "But now age might have slowed your reflexes, impaired your vision." Bennett adjusted the helmet under his arm, the stance of someone about to give a lesson, and let the silence hang. On the other end of the line, Hudson was describing the scene to a captain, each sentence sounding like a call to arms. When the light turned green, Owen Bennett kept a steady hand on the throttle of the old motorcycle and pulled away safely. The wind cut across his face, but he steered with the precision of someone who'd spent his whole life on two wheels. His calm gaze radiated confidence. Anyone seeing him under that helmet would never guess he was an 82-year-old man. Minutes later, a squad car siren shattered the neighborhood's routine. Officer Watson pulled alongside and, before hearing any explanation, assumed weakness, paperwork, age, supposed incapacity. Bennett said only the minimum. He didn't need to prove perfect reflexes or recent test results, much less ask permission to keep going. Across the avenue, Hudson tracked everything through the Veterans Association radio. He reported, "We have a veteran being disrespected by local police, Owen Bennett, an upstanding man I've known for 15 years. Stopped simply for riding." The dispatcher cut in, suddenly alert. "Did you say Owen Bennett? One moment. Mr. Stevens, keep the situation under control. Unit on the way. Don't let them do anything to Colonel Bennett until we arrive. Colonel, we'll be there in 15 minutes. Hudson froze. Colonel? Bennett had never mentioned any rank. As he processed the shock, Watson hardened her tone. "Mr. Bennett, get in the cruiser. We're going for a psychiatric evaluation." He folded his arms. "I'm not going." The officer raised her voice. "This isn't a request, it's an order." Bennett held her gaze steady. "Based on what law?" Watson froze for a moment. No statute allowed her to arrest an elderly man just for riding an old bike, much less force him into a psychiatric exam without good cause. Even so, she was already overexposed and dozens of phones were recording every second. Backing down would be an admission of error. She searched for a quick justification. "Elder Protection Act. You're putting yourself in danger." Bennett curved his lips in the barest smile, the smile of someone who spots a flimsy excuse. Not even the toughest opponents he'd faced in the past had been this careless. "Officer Watson, can you answer a question? How long have you worn that uniform?" "Mr. Bennett, get in the car, now." "I'd rather stay right here." "Then I'll have to restrain you." Across the street, Hudson felt a jolt. The stranger's firm stance overflowed with courage. The air seemed to swallow the city's noise. Everyone watching knew something ready to blow was building there. At that moment, the rapid stutter of engines tore through the silence. 12 Humvees rounded the corner, kicking up a veil of dust and fanned out in a half-moon. 50 soldiers dismounted with measured steps. From the lead vehicle jumped Captain Samuel Coleman, 55 years old, 22 in service, face of steel. He crossed the invisible line separating the local forces, stopped 3 meters from Bennett, and touched the brim of his cap in a crisp salute. "Colonel Bennett." The word colonel reverberated down the street like a gunshot. Watson and Sanchez looked at each other, sudden fear in their eyes. Coleman took a step forward, voice sharp. "There's been a mistake. Who dared detain Colonel Bennett?" Watson tried to regain control. "I'm Officer Watson, local police. We stopped this gentleman because—" The sentence died as Coleman's voice rose and 50 soldiers moved as one, forming a wall of uniforms. "Captain," Sanchez stammered, "we didn't know he was military." Coleman went on. "This man served 3 tours in Vietnam, led intelligence missions in the Gulf and Afghanistan, trained hundreds of officers, including me. He carries 2 Bronze Stars, 2 Purple Hearts with 4 oak leaf clusters, and a Distinguished Service Cross. He's a living legend of our armed forces." He turned to Watson. You just disrespected a hero who gave 6 decades to this country." Sanchez raised his hands. "We were just doing our job. Your duty is to protect and serve, not to hassle a veteran in the middle of the street." The crowd's murmur shifted. Phones were still held up, now in reverent silence. Whispered comments drifted through the air. "Poor guy. That's insane." She crossed the line. Feeling every stare, Watson walked up to Bennett. "Colonel Bennett, I'm sorry, I had no idea." Bennett looked up from behind his dark shades, voice steady but calm. "Officer Watson, remember, never judge someone by what you see. Only those who carry their own scars know how heavy the battles are." The warning hung in the air, dragging an awkward silence with it. Captain Coleman stepped forward. "Colonel, need any help? I can arrange an escort or a ride." "No, Captain, you've done enough already. We'll be close, always." Bennett swung onto the Harley. The engine growled, and in a spontaneous gesture, 50 soldiers lined up to form an honor corridor, helmets raised, sealing a silent pact of respect. The bike pulled away, swallowed by road dust. An hour later, back at the station, Sheriff Smith, 52 years old, 15 with that badge, picked up the phone. "County Sheriff's Office, Smith." "Sheriff, this is Captain Coleman at Fort Carson. We need to talk about what happened this morning." "I've already spoken with Watson and Sanchez," Smith said, turning from the window. "What steps are you taking?" The sheriff exhaled slowly. He'd known Alice Watson for 5 years, a straight-arrow cop, dedicated, incapable of malice. Even so, protocol called for caution. Someone would want answers. His pen tapped the desk, marking the tension while he searched for a path that upheld the law and his conscience. "Captain, let me be blunt." "Go ahead." "My deputies messed up the approach, not the law. Colonel Bennett isn't after revenge. He doesn't want lawsuits or ruined careers. Even so, as a military outfit, we can't let veterans face that kind of humiliation." Sheriff Smith felt the weight behind the warning. Pressure reaching beyond county lines, powerful eyes on every move. "What's your plan?" "Joint training. Your officers will spend a few days on our base and see up close what it means to serve." "It's a deal, Captain." 7 days later, the station's main hall was packed. Smith shut the door before speaking. "From now on, every street procedure follows a new protocol, and each of you will take part in military training." A buzz swept through the group. Some hid their nerves, others, curious, traded quick looks. Near the back row, Officer Alice Watson rose slowly, hands clenched on her holster, feeling the weight of a choice that could shape her career. On her face, the unspoken question echoed around the room, holding everyone's attention. Smith caught the movement, waited for silence, and fixed his eyes on her, inviting the first question. "Friends, a few days ago I messed up. I disrespected a man who, more than titles, carries character. That mistake taught a lesson no manual covers. Recognize the story behind every face." I paused in front of the room and went on. "Whenever we stop someone on the street, we're dealing with years of life, not just paperwork. Our first move has to be to ask, not assume, to listen, not judge." After that speech, I took on a quiet mission. I grabbed the cruiser and headed down Highway 340, heart racing. The destination was a farm surrounded by open fields, a well-kept white house with a plank porch and 2 chairs rocking in the breeze. Near the barn, a John Deere tractor showed fresh oil streaks. Lying under the machine, coveralls smeared, was Colonel Bennett. I parked under a fig tree, killed the radio, and walked over. "Colonel Bennett?" My voice came out firm but not harsh. He slid out from under the tractor, wiped his hands on a thick rag, and looked up, curious. "Officer Watson, what can I do for you?" "I'd like to talk, if that's okay." "I've got fresh coffee," he said, nodding toward the door. The simple kitchen smelled of roasted beans. He filled 2 blue ceramic mugs and pointed to the chair across. When I sat, I drew a deep breath. The next words had to come out, yet every second of silence made the moment heavier. It was exactly that pause I needed to face. "Officer, mind if I ask a few questions?" "Go ahead," Watson said, opening her notepad. "What made you put on that uniform?" Watson hesitated. This wasn't a routine question. "I wanted to serve, to make people's lives better." Bennett kept his gaze steady. "How many accidents involving older drivers have you handled?" "Very few," she admitted. "Most crashes are young drivers who ran off the road after drinking or speeding." Bennett raised an eyebrow, a hint of a smile. So why assume my age was the problem? The cop's silence answered before her words. Bennett stood, walked to the window, and watched cows scattered in the field, chewing through an unhurried day. Respect, he said, still facing the view, doesn't come from insignia or metal on a lapel. It comes from how we treat anyone, whether they're 20 or 80. Watson followed his gaze to the bike outside. The 1970 Harley creaked in the wind, but the engine still throbbed. She realized that roar had carried him down more roads than she'd traveled in her life. The machine still wanted the open road. So did its owner. Maybe we all still do. If this story hooked you, stick around. There's plenty of asphalt ahead. Thanks for hanging with us so far. If you liked it, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell. See you in the next video.